now. There's an issue with Reddit. There's a lawsuit.
Reddit says that it was because I attempted to monetize the community. I attempted to take control of my own brand, the Wall Street Bets, which was flourishing all over the place. I'd written a book. I was in the process of launching this kind of a stock trading gamified competition, and all of my efforts to monetize, or everybody else's, were perfectly fine up until I submitted my trademark request. And then all of a sudden I get removed from the subreddit. Reddit's like, oh, that's a really cool community. I like it. And just go to the trademark office and like, we'll go ahead and take that now. Thank you very much. And then they just register. Now it's their intellectual property. So it's just really confusing to me because it's like, hold on a second. So now not only do you want me to read your terms of service, now you want me to freaking have a law degree? And I'll be up there with Jordan Belfort and with Raul Paul, Anthony Scaramucci. These are heavy hitters in the financial world that were all in the documentary in large part.
Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I am here with Jamie Rogozinski. He is the founder of Wall Street Bets, and there's some interesting new stuff going on, and so check out the video. I know that sounds horrible, right? I know that was not, it's sad.
That was actually pretty good for a first take.
Yeah, it's silly. I'm not, and then listen, like I said, you've already witnessed me in action. So nobody watches this channel thinking they're dealing with a professional. So, I don't even try. I don't even say, if I mess it up, I just keep going.
You know what? People actually appreciate like just a good old fashioned unpolished sincerity. Nowadays, it's almost rewarded.
Yeah, so far it's working for me. So, yeah. All right. So like I had said, before we started, that I've watched a few videos, and I remember when this was kind of all happening. Like I remember hearing bits and pieces of it, but I don't, I always joke around. People ask me about real estate, or they'll ask me about some things that I don't know anything about. And it's like, I don't talk about that. Like and I always use the example, like, I don't talk about the stock market because I don't know anything about the stock market. So, there's certain things I just don't talk anything about. And this would be one of those things. But so I was hearing bits and pieces of it. And I do know what a short, I know what a short sale is in real estate, but I know what, shorting stock, I know the basics of it. And I know what a pump and dump scheme is. And I know what, there's all these stock guys in prison that you meet that have done certain things. So, I know some basics of what's going on. Not that this was criminal, but when you listen to, when I've listened to podcasts about it, and I'm only listened to a couple, it almost sounds criminal. Like what doesn't make, like I was listening, I was like, I know that's legal, but it just doesn't sound right. That when they were driving the prices, they're driving the prices down or they're driving the prices up. And so can you kind of go through it and just explain to me what?
Just in case I forget to touch on that comment. I think that while GameStop was taking place, a lot of people were actually wondering, I don't know if criminal is the right word, but whether there were any kind of regulatory infractions, right? Like whether things were being done correctly as far as the regulators are concerned. And I remember seeing debates on TV saying, like, is this a lot? Because like there was no overt law breaking per se. There's certain things that are straight up considered illegal, and those laws or regulations are really like clear. But in this particular case, when people were just honest, when you lie, for example, about your intentions with the stock, when you mislead, when you're fraudulent, they'll be like, yeah, buy this investment because it's the best, and you're lying. That's against the law, right? But if you say, buy this because we wanted to go to the moon, right? Like, we're not saying that the GameStop is a good investment, but we want to kill the hedge funds, right? Like, that's why you should buy. Like, they're not lying. And so they're being brutally honest. And so therefore, as far as I know, there was nobody got in trouble for that. So anyways, but yeah, I could walk back I'll even rewind just slightly before GameStop itself put Wall Street Bets on the map for people that weren't familiar before GameStop, right? Like that made it more of a household name. even to people that weren't following finance things. So Wall Street Bets is a community of retail or amateur investors that don't mind taking higher risk trades, right? Like they use just really unsophisticated language, although their methods are very sophisticated, for taking really high risk, high return type trades. And, they collaborate together. They just crowdsource ideas. They're looking for just opportunities where collectively they have some type of an advantage. Historically speaking, it's up to investment banks to say, okay, we're going to pay these PhD geniuses that do analysis or quantitative computers, or co-locations, like they'll physically buy computers and they'll put them next to the stock exchanges so that like the messages are transferred really fast, and so they can buy the stocks quicker than the rest of the people that are further. But people that are sitting at home using their cell phone to trade, they don't have that advantage. But it turns out they have other advantages, and they just enjoy having fun, and they use language revolving around the risk and gambling and just enjoying. And it started right after not right after, but shortly after the financial crisis, where big banks were being lambasted for treating Wall Street like a casino. And so it was like, how dare you do this with our mortgages, and how dare you are irresponsible with our retirement funds. And I think there was a sentiment among younger people, including myself, where I said, well, if the banks can do it, then we should be able to do it too. If they can be irresponsible, then nothing's to stop us from actually doing it too, with the hopes of maybe hitting it big, right? Like hitting a home run, and then we can also get rich too, right? So that's where Wall Street Bets is, and it's exploded. There's obviously a lot of people that were like-minded, and the years prior to GameStop, there had been a lot of really high-profile, really interesting things that had taken place, but mostly whenever Wall Street Bets made the news, it was CNBC or Bloomberg, right? It was just finance-related outlets. And then GameStop came around. GameStop was interesting because it was kind of like this.
Before we get into that, I was going to say first, like, when did you started it? Just after the financial, or after 2008 financial crisis?
12? Correct. After the 2008 financial crisis.
In the middle of it. Yeah.
I'd lost my job, and, a lot of things. But in 2012, after I'd gotten a new job and things were starting to stabilize again, and I had disposable income with which I could be responsible with, in 2012 is when I started. Right?
So you went on. You started what, Reddit?
I went on Reddit, and then I also started a Twitter account. I bought a couple of domains. I had a Google account, where they give you like the Gmail and the YouTube, whatever it is. Forget all the properties that I ended up getting on social media. And it's just this omnipresent, it's just an online community, right? It's just this philosophy, this brand, this way of thinking. And currently Wall Street Bets exists. The largest community is currently on Reddit, but you have them on Discord, and you have them on Telegram and on TikTok and Instagram. And then you have like almost like offshoots of it, right? Where you have like Wall Street, Silver, Satoshi Street Bets, Korea Street Bet, like different geographic or asset classes or whatever it might be. But all of them kind of sing to the same tune.
So they get together and they kind of say, hey, this is happening here. Just heard about this. This is what's going on here. This is a great company. This company is having issues. My understanding is that sort of thing. Or
yeah, but even more jokey, right? So if you can imagine, it's like the anti-Wall Street. If you can imagine an analyst commenting on, let's say, Jerome Powell, who's the head of the Federal Reserve. He sets interest rates and monetary policy related stuff. He gets up there and uses really big words. Right. And says, well, we need to combat inflation according to this thing with the interest rate so that the, blah, 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 and unemployment rate. And just, he just throws jargon out there. And then you have the analysts that go on television afterwards and they pull out their Excel sheet and they're like, we're using all sorts of different ways to discount the future cash flow. And then today's time value of money, and they're just jargon, right? And so Wall Street Bets is going to take almost to make fun of it, but not, right? They're going to turn that same speech into a meme, right? Which is like, Jerome Powell makes stocks go down, right? By making interest go up, which is really the same freaking thing. You don't need to have words that are so many syllables to say stocks go down when interest goes up.
Right.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's by design sometimes, right? There's like a whole chain reaction of logic that takes place in there. But you can actually convey that entire 30-minute segment with like a picture and a really, really poorly spelled out like caption on it, right? And that'll actually make you laugh. So that's what Wall Street Bets does. It'll simplify the same concepts. And so now you're understanding that same analysis of whatever news just took place. And it's almost like this way for people to, make fun of themselves, make fun of other people, but also point out opportunities, right? You have people that'll say, hey, guys, check this out. This thing is happening over here. I believe that if we do this, that, and the other, and then other people will jump on top and say, nah, that's a really stupid idea, or that's a really great idea. And then other people will say, hey, I'm just going to buy, the stock because I like the car. I just bought a car and I like it, so I bought the stock. The car is really fast. It's some really non-sophisticated investment idea, but people just cheer this person on, right? Maybe sometimes they accidentally make money, and sometimes they will make an investment, but then like other people will pour in with actual fundamental analysis and say, well, maybe you bought it for the wrong reasons, but check this out, right? They're about to do a merger with whatever, or open a plant over here. And, and just, you have this collaboration of sophisticated financial analysis dressed up as unsophisticated apes that are just kind of butting heads.
Right. Okay. All right. And that just, so that's the community. And it just, how does that progress into, the whole GameStop thing? Like, if it wasn't just a bunch of guys talking, they end up buying, they end up buying the stock, and they end up, I guess several of these hedge funds went under, and, and these guys are losing tons of money, and, obviously they're buying it for the wrong reason. Well, it's not illegal, so it's not the wrong reason. They're buying it to make money for their stockholders. I get it. So, but you guys come in and that ends up becoming like this huge movement.
Yeah, like short sellers, they serve a productive purpose, right? Like they have, there's a solid argument to make to say short sellers sometimes identify inefficiencies in the market. Like, just the market itself is a productive activity, right? Like, if you think about the fact that a market gives you the price of a stock because a lot of people agree on that price, and that tells you something about stuff, right? Like, such as there's a reason why nobody's buying this company right now. Right? Somebody knows something, therefore we shouldn't touch it, right? Somebody did the research. So short sellers,
emphasis, it's a bad company, or
and sometimes short sellers go out there and find out, hey, like, there's this company is just realizing that this, I don't know, a Wirecard right now is an example that comes to mind, where they just did their own, I forget what their actual fraud was, but like, I think they faked their own transactions, or they just did wash transactions or something. They were laundering money basically for the mafia, I think. And so if you have a company like that that's about to go public, you want to short sell a company like that because you don't want ordinary investors to get caught up with losing money. Thanks to short sellers, they expose these things. So that's, overall, they don't serve a bad purpose, but sometimes they get a bad rap, right? And in this particular case, I don't think that short sellers were necessarily exposing fraud. They just struck a nerve. So I think what happens with GameStop is you have this perfect storm of things that happen. A lot of stuff had to happen perfectly in order for it to take place. So we have this designated meme stock. This is a new phenomenon that exists nowadays, right? These are stocks that everybody, all the retail people, are just clamoring over. They just really enjoy this stock because it's popular, it's gone viral, everyone's buying it, everyone's excited about it. These meme stocks usually have to have some component that makes it a tangible emotional connection to it. It's like, look, I get it. Brick and mortar's over. Coronavirus, nobody's going to the mall. You can now download games. You no longer have to use a disc to put it inside of the console. It's just on the computer. But it's like, when I grow up, I used to have Tetris and I had to put the cartridge in the thing, and so I remembered these memories. So I have this emotional attachment to this thing. So I'm not going to allow this company to go down because I'll be sad, right? Nothing to do with a smart investment decision. It's an emotional thing of saying, I don't want this company to go under, right? And then you had the certain players that were actually making the fun, mainly Keith Gill or Deep Fucking Value, Rory Kitty. It's the same person that the very, very enthusiastic individual, intelligent, had a YouTube channel, was actually throwing in fundamental analysis, saying, hey guys, like I've done the math, this company's good, I'm going to do a YOLO bet, right? And he threw $50,000 into these relatively risky stock options. So everyone's like, look at this crazy dude. He's just throwing a ton of freaking money with this really dangerously risky derivatives play. Like just, I won't walk you through that. But it's leverage. It just means that if GameStop were to go up 10%, he might be able to make, I don't know, 50%, right? Like it's one of the features of this. And so, and then all of a sudden there's chatter that's taking place. And all of a sudden you have validation by people like Ryan Cohn, who's just this person who's historically gone in there and shaken up companies. He rescues them. He buys, he does these corporate takeovers where he buys large percentages of the stocks and he moves the board of directors around. I think he ended up getting a seat on the board of directors, right? And then all of a sudden they exposed some short sellers, and the short sellers started going on YouTube making videos antagonizing Wall Street Bets. And there's nothing better than to antagonize, like to have this public war, because now you have an adversary with which you can try and defeat, right? Nobody loves, everybody loves a good war of saying, aha, it's going to be you, Mr. Andrew Left or Gabe Plotkin or whatever, there's got a name and a last name and a picture with which I can make memes with, right? And so now you have good guys and bad guys, and you have this potential money-making opportunity. And then you have this component where a technical component where, so I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So these are all kind of the social components, right? Then you have the technical component. You have a stock that is likely to go down because GameStop is a bad investment at the time. Nobody's going to the stores to buy these games. You have a lot of hedge funds that were short selling, meaning they were betting that it was going to go down, but they were very, very heavily short selling it, making it vulnerable to a certain type of maneuver called a short squeeze. So then you have the Wall Street Bets community turning it into a meme stock, making them irrationally excited about a stock which doesn't have a fundamental reason to go up other than the fact that they're happy. And now they have an adversary, because if the stock goes up, the people that were betting against it are going to lose money. And then there's some more technical capacities behind that they had fine-tuned certain maneuvers with stock options, and I won't really get into that, but it's very sophisticated. They don't have that much money to push stock prices around, right? Even if you say, yeah, I know that there's 10 million of you, but that's still not enough money. Even if all of 10 million of you have like, whatever, $100 in your account, like, it's still not enough. They use these stock options in a certain way that they're able to leverage it, right? And this is a practice technique that they had worked on for the past couple of years. So they're like, yeah, but we know this little cheat code. And so they were just turning up the screws, and they ended up making the price of GameStop go from like, I forget what it was, from $40 a share to like $450 a share in a matter of days. Essentially forcing all the short sellers out of their short position. They had lost tremendous amounts of money, billions of dollars, and lots of them had to close their doors. And it was this really special moment because you had this narrative, and now I get to kind of close this circle of having started Wall Street Bets at the heels of the financial crisis, where there was this level of resent or anger or just a bad taste in the idea, where you had this Occupy Wall Street movement where they're saying, hey, the 99% and the 1% and inequality, and so just nothing happened from that. There was never any closure. The Occupy Wall Streeters went home after a few years. Just no, I don't remember anything substantive ever taking place. And so I think there's a lot of those feelings ended up resurfacing, right? They're like, I am still mad about what happened back then. And I think the news and the entertainment industry, and I think people even that weren't in the U.S. that weren't involved with the Wall Street, with the American Stock Exchange, but they were affected by the financial crisis, were like, hell yeah, damn right. Like, I'm not going to buy stocks or whatever, but I'm happy that the 99% that these little Davids got together against the Goliath and were actually able to teach them a lesson, right? Like, because Wall Street has been painted as this bad, irresponsible actor that was never held accountable. And all of a sudden it's like, there is a way to kind of put a chink in their armor. And obviously there wasn't this grand war that was defeated. Wall Street didn't go away, nor do I think that would be a good thing anyways. But it was a feel-good story where at least there was a good punch that was returned. And Wall Street had to take notice that the little guys can also get together and fight back if it's done properly. So that was the GameStop event or saga or moment.
All right. So when this whole thing kind of subsided, right, and it everything kind of, I guess, there was an equilibrium kind of applied to it, and everything kind of went back to normal. Then, like, what happened after that with you? Like, as far as you were in the center of this, this interesting, I don't know what, like you said, saga. So what happened? Were you approached by some people to do a documentary, a movie, write your book, write a book, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it was interesting. So, I wouldn't say that I was in the center of it. There had been a lot of things throughout the years that have been interesting on Wall Street bets. And I've never really claimed to take credit for manufacturing any of them, including GameStop, right? Like the beauty of crowdsourcing these moments, like that there is strength in collective intelligence, and there is strength in crowdsourcing these ideas. And it's always just been a combination of ingenuity from various different peoples and meeting the right timing and the right opportunity and the right vetting and platform system. So I don't ever pretend to take credit for it. And that's specifically with GameStop. By the time that GameStop took place, I was no longer on Reddit, on the subreddit itself. So I wasn't participating on that forum per se. I'd written a book already, published in 2020. I'd done all sorts of other things regarding this, but I was approached for movie rights. Like, I'm still the creator of this philosophy, this mindset, this community, or these communities, right? And still viewed as the thought leader behind this movement, and definitely got a lot of attention for what took place. I'd say the person who got the most amount of attention for GameStop was Keith Gill. This would have been the guy with the YouTube video who said, "I'm going to take 50 grand, right, and I'm going to put it all on GameStop." I mean, he ended up making, like, I don't know what he walked away with, but his bet at the highest level was like $50 million. I think he cashed it out closer to 30 million. So, he was the hero of that story. And he was the face of it because he was just the champion where he says, "I'm not selling this thing." And he was this charismatic guy that people at first, when he was losing money, they were just bashing him because his idea was dumb. And then he stuck to his guns, and all of a sudden he started making money. And then people started bashing him again because he's not taking profits off the table, right? And then he just said, I'm not selling, right? I'm just diamond hands. And then all of a sudden, when you take a $50,000 bet and you turn it into a $5 million bet, it takes a tremendous amount of a lot of things like stamina and discipline and, foresight. Balls to knock it, to turn that into 10 million, to 15 million, to 20, to 30. So he's the one that really deserves the credit for that particular moment. But yeah, I was, I was approached. It was definitely an interesting moment because I started getting calls from, first kind of just these people that said, "Oh, I'm a producer and I worked on some such and such film," and I was like kind of starstruck because I Googled them and they were like, never heard of them, right? Never heard of the movie, but like I'd connect 6 Degrees of Separation and they were like loosely affiliated with some movie that maybe I'd heard of. And then eventually I'd start fielding calls from people that were, you know, working on stuff that I definitely was impressed with. I was like, holy cow, I just got off the phone with, the guy that wrote, I forget what it was, like The Sopranos or, and then I was the guys that worked on The Wolf of Wall Street. And then I was on the phone at one point with Ben Mesrick, who also ended up writing a book on this topic. And so soon enough, I was like, all right, okay, how does this game work? Because there's authors and directors and producers, and everyone wants to make a movie about this thing, and everyone seems to be the right person to make a deal with, right? And so I had to get a really quick lesson on how the Hollywood works, and it's actually kind of fun because the one thing that everybody agreed on from who I was speaking with, they said, look, let me tell you how Hollywood works. It's when you have a situation like this, people try and race and put a team together, right? And they'll say, okay, well, you have, Steven Spielberg, and Leonardo DiCaprio and this whatever author, and you get the team together, and then they say, yeah, we've all decided to do this thing together, and then they announce it to the world, and they plant this proverbial flag on the ground, and all of a sudden everybody else that was trying to race and put something together, they all kind of back off and be like, God damn it, they got DiCaprio or they got Spielberg. There's no way we can do 2 movies, especially not with that freaking team. And so everyone backs away and starts looking for some other movie idea, because usually, like, movies, you can only have 1 movie. Sometimes you can get up to 2 movies if the topic is good enough. And so I was in the middle of this race and talking to all these different people, and and eventually I ended up signing this deal with Rat Pack, which was a production studio that works on like X-Men and a bunch of other these movies. And it was useful because the other thing that I understood is, if you're working with with the directors and the writers and the actors, none of those people have the money. The studios have the money, right?
Right.
And so that's how you know that the movie gets made. All the other ones are just kind of crossing their fingers. So it's like, well, Rat Pack has the money, so that they'll definitely make that movie. Otherwise, you just kind of sign your life rights and then you don't get it. So I signed with them, and we planted the full pole on the ground. We're like, aha, we're making this movie.
That'll stop everybody else.
That should stop everybody else in their tracks, because it's Rat Pack, and they've got like the founder of Wall Street Bets, and it's got, big names behind this thing. And next thing you know, I'm flipping through Twitter, and I'm like, oh, Netflix is going to do one too. Okay, well, whatever.
Not quite the same thing.
Yeah. And next thing you know, I was like Ben Mesrick, who had been on the phone with before, like, damn it, Ben Mesrick sold it too. There's 3 of them coming out, and the next thing you know, 4 and 5, and then Hulu and HBO, it's like freaking 9 different movies on this. Like, okay, I guess people either really love this story and they think that it's worth having that many of them, or they're out of stuff to do because of, we were just getting out of the pandemic. I mean, this was in January of 2021, so almost still 2020, and so everyone was just dying for a story that was not about putting on a face mask or
but the more similar content or stories that are out there, the less likely that yours gets picked up, because they
all get picked up. They just get diluted, I suppose, right? So you just need to find a way to differentiate it. It's a matter of saying, all right, well, that's fine that they're all going to cover GameStop, but how do you make it so that this one is unique? And,
right.
And I haven't seen all the ones that have come out. I've seen several of them, and there is a ton of overlap, right? They're having to cover, and I've seen this from everyone, including with my own documentary when they were going through the learning process. It's a complicated concept, and when you want to try and translate all the pieces into a entertainment, 1-2 hour film, you have to walk the audience through a story, and you have to spoon feed them the fundamentals to be able, so that they can appreciate the nuance later on. And then they all end up kind of gravitating towards a very similar storyline. And so they end up having really similar stuff. And so I think what it differentiates the current movies is like who they were able to interview, right? Because they're all documentaries up to now. There hasn't been any nonfiction. I know that there's one, sorry, nonfiction. Yeah, there's only one non-documentary that's being worked on that I know of right now. Every other one has been a documentary. So it's a matter of who they get to interview and what kind of perspectives they get. With me, they get the benefit of having true inside information with regards to how things work behind the scenes, right? Everyone else has to rely on newspaper clippings and stuff. And they get access to some of the best.
You're also are able to give them the origins of it's someone else telling that part of the story.
Yeah, and I have access to all the all the people that are correct, like the people that are, we're actually going to the premiere this weekend at South by Southwest. I'm flying out tomorrow, and I just got my scheduled for right after the premiere. There's a Q&A, and I'll be up there with Jordan Belfort and with Raul Paul and with Anthony Scaramucci, and I forget, right? But these are heavy hitters in the financial world that were all in the documentary in large part, because it's Rat Pack, and many of the other ones, large part because it was me that was on there. And so you have very relevant players that are either talking on the side from Wall Street Bets, or talking on the side of Wall Street, or on the perspective of either government or social, depending on how they're talking about it. So, but nevertheless, I mean, the point of this having 8 different movies wasn't necessarily to try and show off might. It was the fact that this incident was such a big moment that resonated so well around the world, that there was enough demand that movies said, let's take a chance. Let's actually go out there and make a movie and spend money on it. I know there's 6 other ones out there, and I know that somebody's already signed with that guy, but let's go ahead and spend money on the 7th one, right? That's a risk, that financial risk that they have to take, in hopes that there will be enough demand, given the saturated market, that someone's going to say, yeah, I'll actually watch this one on this channel, even if I've already been exposed to the other ones. And it's true. Like, I ended up getting messages from so many people around the world. And I think that's what I found really interesting, is half the messages that I got from people of support or whatever, were from the US, but the other half were from people elsewhere in the world. My favorite message, I will never forget it to this day, was some taxi cab driver in Spain. And he said to me, dude, I don't understand anything about anything when it comes to stocks or the stock market or finance. I don't get what it is that you guys are doing, but I think it's awesome. You guys just keep sticking it to the man, and I love it, right? All he understood was that the little guys were fighting back against the banks, right? And it warmed his heart, right? And he's a taxi cab driver halfway around the world that doesn't know anything, and he was happy for this movement. And I think that was cool. And that has nothing to do with finance. That has this just heartwarming, I don't know, empowerment, this feeling of empowerment that everyone could relate with.
Okay. So what's happening now? What's happening with you now? There's an issue with Reddit. There's a lawsuit.
Yeah. So there is, there's kind of this side story that's been going on. I ended up getting removed as the head moderator from Reddit in 2020, like I said, before GameStop took place. And this was,
why did that happen?
the Reddit says that it was because I attempted to monetize the community. And so it's part, so I'm suing them because, I will share as much as I'm able to without really jeopardizing the legal issue at heart. Most of these things are public knowledge, so people are able to go out there and read them, right? So you can see that the counts that I'm doing is breach of contract. One of the arguments is that the attempting to monetize is not an actual infraction in their terms of service and blah blah blah. But without going much into specifics, I attempted to take control of my own brand of Wall Street Bets, which was flourishing all over the place. I'd written a book. I was in the process of launching this kind of a stock trading gamified competition. And I submitted a trademark request, like I filed to trademark the word Wall Street Bets. And all of my efforts to monetize, or everybody else's, were perfectly fine up until I submitted my trademark request. And then all of a sudden I get removed from the subreddit. So at the time, I'm kicking and screaming and I'm, making assumptions as to why they removed me. And, and it's taken me many years to be able to piece everything together. But a few months after I was removed, they never answered anything. They never gave me a chance to appeal their decision. They never explained their decision. They just straight up removed me. They said, you broke the terms, and, that's it.
How were they notified of that? I mean, they're not.
I don't know.
They're not a part of the Copyright Office. Like, why would, I'm sure the Copyright Office didn't notify them. So they had to have gotten notified.
That's an excellent question. I don't know. But it turns out that, after years of looking into this, like a few months after, so once you file for a trademark, one of the last steps before they're issued, it's fully registered, they do this thing where they publish it for any companies or individuals out there that want to oppose this brand, right? It's like the proverbial, if anyone opposes this couple, get married, speak now or forever hold your peace, like that, right, for trademarks. And so when we were on that step, Reddit spoke up and said, I oppose this thing. And this was pretty much shortly after I was removed. And I've been in this opposition battle with them since I was removed, right? And so to answer your question, I started doing more research, and it turns out Reddit's has made a habit out of trademarking communities that are very successful. In other words, there's been countless examples of individuals that go to Reddit, say, I have a great idea. I'm going to make a community, for example, Am I the Asshole, right? That's the name of currently, I believe it's the most popular community on Reddit. And people go on there and they just talk about their grievances or stuff. And it just exploded in the past year. And Reddit's like, oh, that's a really cool community. I like it. And just go to the trademark office and like, we'll go ahead and take that now. Thank you very much. And then they just register. Now it's their intellectual property.
Is that,
right?
Is that a part of their terms? And
well, they're using lawyers to argue that they are, because, a lot of times people, this is what's crazy. It's like, whenever I speak out, and sometimes I have a lot of people that on the internet, you always have devil's advocates. And so people say, did you read the terms of service before you did these things? I said, to be honest with you, I actually did. And the terms of service says, you get to keep your content. It's your content, you get to keep it. And then furthermore, it says, whether you are uploading content that you've previously created or you're creating it using our services for the first time, you're granting us this license that's royalty free to host it and publish it, blah, blah, blah. Those are the words they used. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but as a non-lawyer that actually takes the trouble to read the terms of service, which is already a lot to ask for, I think to myself, it sounds sounds to me like it's mine, right?
Right.
And so no, I don't know. And so now there's lawyers involved, and now their lawyers are saying, no, that's not what that means. Your content doesn't apply for your content or whatever. I don't know. So it's just really confusing to me because it's like, hold on a second. So now not only do you want me to read your terms of service, now you want me to freaking have a law degree to know that those words don't mean what they're supposed to mean. Like, but it doesn't matter. I mean, like, to me, it's this thing where I worked on this community for like a decade and I wrote a book on it, you know, and if they're saying like, oh, you're trying to take advantage of this moment to monetize this cash grab, it's like they're missing the point. I don't know if people have tried to write a book before. I'm not an author. I'm not an English major. I'm an engineer. English was my worst class, you know, both in high school and in college. Like, I despise it. But I wrote a book because my passion for this subject, the ideas that I wanted to share with the world were stronger than my hatred towards writing stuff. And if you want to personally enrich yourself, writing a book is really not the most efficient way of doing it. There's a lot of easier ways to do it than to write a freaking book. You know, it's something that I truly care about, like hardcore. And so then they just rip it apart from me, like, yeah, you can go over there now. And they paint me as this, like, you know, opportunist cash grabber. And, you know, and it sucks. Like, it just sucks to have something that I love and I care about so deeply just get ripped apart from me. And then to further that, they're then taking it away from me, preventing me from doing this elsewhere. In other words, by taking this trade, they've since filed, you know, further trademark applications for Wall Street Bets of their own in such a way that if they win, I can no longer use that same brand. That sign that's behind me that's kind of cut off that says Wall Street Bets. You know, if I want to create a forum on whatever new platform comes out next, they're going to be able to say, no, you can't anymore because that's Reddit's property, right? Like, that's a huge freaking blow, and that's wrong. And it's like a social media company that relies on content creators to come to a social media company to create content. Like, they just don't get it. And so that's kind of where we're at. And I've been quiet. I've been silent about this battle for 3 years, mainly because I was hoping to find a friendly solution around this. I'm like, dude, I don't want to have a battle about this where everybody in the world, like, you know, has to find out. We should be able to negotiate a mutually beneficial arrangement such that, such that it makes sense. And, you know, something happened this year that they're in a huge hurry to get this over with, and they put me up against the wall and didn't give me any choice. And so I finally decided to defend myself and went on the offensive.
Yeah, it seems like it seems like suddenly YouTube says that my channel is their channel, they own it, and they own the name, and they own, you know, my website and everything else, even though I'm clearly the person that started the channel and have been working the channel this entire time.
That's exactly right. And it's like, it's almost as if they kick you out and they get to keep your followers and they get to keep publishing videos on your behalf.
Right.
Right. Like, you know, and then they can use the argument in court that they says, well, I know that Matt Cox says this is Matt Cox's podcast, but it's really not his anymore because he can't control the contents of his podcast anymore because we kicked them out. Which is actually an argument that's, you know, being used. It's like, yeah, that's, I don't know. So it's, you know, like, here's the thing is like, so I use these arguments and these arguments are not logical to you and me. Unfortunately, you have the law and you have lawyers and you have these jargon, and they'll talk about stuff that to me makes little sense. And so I just, you know, I do come out and I speak out about these types of things. Because it makes no sense, right? Like, it's surprising to me that a social media company Reddit should understand social media, like the way that every other company does. The reason why YouTube doesn't have an incentive to do that is because YouTube makes money from you,
Right.
right? You make money from you, and so does YouTube. You guys both are happy with whatever arrangement you have with YouTube. If it wasn't because of you, and if it's because of YouTube, neither of you would be working this thing out, right? Like, if YouTube burns you like that, or they just run you away and they keep all of your stuff, then everyone's going to be like, yeah, no thanks. I'm going to go elsewhere now. And then YouTube's left with no more content creators that are going to their site with great ideas.
Right.
And that's game over. I don't understand how Reddit is justifying this maneuver. And now they're doing so publicly, and they're antagonizing me publicly, right? They're painting me. They're like, oh, this guy's just, trying to come after us now because we're, like, for 3 years he was perfectly quiet, and now he's just come out of the good woodworks. I'm like, really, Reddit? For 3 years I was quiet. For 3 years you've been like drowning me with legal like fees. For 3 years I've been trying to be really quiet. Like, but whatever. But it doesn't matter, because at this point, look, I'm speaking out in as much as I can. I'm fighting back. I'm not going to go down without a fight. And I think that what, my property belongs to me. I think Reddit needs to do the right thing, and I'm really confident that once all the facts come out on the table, that this is this is.
So you're filing under what? Basically theft of intellectual property?
It's all the counts are on there. It's not theft of intellectual property, because I think it's all civil. It's trademark infringement, breach of contract, and a bunch of other ones like there. People are able to, if people go on my Twitter, like at Wall Street Bets on Twitter, and they can scroll down a little bit, they can see the full text of the thing. But essentially, I'm suing them for having removed me from the subreddit under false pretenses, by not removing me correctly from the subreddit, from trying to take away my trademark, and from actually infringing on my trademark, in addition to a few other counts.
Right. Okay. And you have a law firm?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, you're not, listen, I was in federal prison. I fought I sued Warner Brothers. I sued IE Entertainment. And I sued for theft of a story that I wrote that was, anyway, it ended up being it was a lawsuit between me and the guys that made War Dogs, which I believe was a Rat Pack.
They stole it from you?
I think. Well, it was really Ephraim Deveroli, the guy in the movie War Dogs. The main character is a guy named Ephraim Deveroli. Well, it's David Packows and Ephraim Deveroli. Deveroli is played by Jonah Hill. I was in prison with the real Ephraim Deveroli, and I wrote his memoir. Okay. When he got out, Warner Brothers got a hold of the memoir, and according to Deveroli, they used it to help write the movie War Dogs. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I do know that when I then sued him, and I sued Warner Brothers, because he also sued Warner Brothers, but he didn't include me in the lawsuit. So he took my property, he took the memoir I wrote, he left prison with it, published it, and then sued Warner Brothers, saying they had stolen parts of the story. And so there was a lawsuit, and that I wasn't included, and he just kind of forgot about me because I was still in prison. So I had to sue him. I had to sue Warner Brothers. And then I ended up getting out of federal prison, and then we ended up settling the lawsuit. But I mean, you didn't even think I didn't have a lawyer at that time. We were doing it inside of prison ourselves as inmates, and this went on for years.
Yeah.
So I know. Plus, of course, I also fought my own case. I got a sentence of 26 years, and I got it cut twice. I got 12 years knocked off, and I ended up doing 13. So I mean, I know going back and forth with just in the legal system, criminal and civil is horrible. It's, you know, and I was doing it from a prison. Like we're literally using 30-year-old Swin-Tech typewriters to type up motions, and we're dealing with law firms that have hundreds of lawyers working for them, and it's just me and a couple of inmates. And it you know, went on forever. It's extremely frustrating. So I was going to say, but you know, luckily you have a whole.
I do have I have a wonderful law firm and wonderful lawyers, and I'm really thankful for them because they have a tremendous dedication for this cause, and they've had success in this type of cases going up against social media companies. And but yeah, but I definitely sympathize with the legal system, right? It's just this for people that are non-lawyers, it's frustrating, right? Like, you know, I think I can be thankful for its existence. It allows for people to seek justice or seek an arbiter or seek some type of
Resolution.
Exactly, or at least I get a fair shot at it in whatever way that's possible, right? Like it's easy to be able to say, well, it's not fair because whatever, but it's better than it could be. And so so I'm very thankful to have all that there. And then even though it's easy to complain about the processes or various aspects of it, I find myself being a lot more thankful for its existence than I am frustrated with whatever idiosyncratic components of it that exists.
Right. Yeah, it could definitely be worse. But I you know, the problem is it's extremely frustrating. It takes a ton of time, and in the end, a lot of times what's very clear, you know, in the actual statutes, they just don't go by. And the lawyers are they're so crafty. They're able to twist an argument in a way that's almost hard to follow. And so, I mean, it's difficult. Like it's a, you know, people say that, you know, a legal battle, it's a battle. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And it's, you know, and sometimes it's just a war of attrition. Like they just wear you down, you know. That was certainly the case with the ones I've been involved with. And it's the same thing though, isn't it? It's the same. It's you know, they're Goliath, you know, and you're.
It is.
You know, so.
It is, but it's like in my nature, right? Like they most definitely are Goliath. They've been valued at a $10 billion company, and they have more lawyers, more resources, more money, they have more everything than I do. Like,
Right.
you know, and to some extent they get to go home at 5 o'clock and just be like, how was your day at work? Like, good. You know, I worked on, you know, like filed for a new trademark. I did this thing. I got, you know, up against this guy for Wall Street Bet, you know, like I'm just like this kind of like a checklist, right? They could just turn that off. And for me,
Crush a couple people.
Passion, I don't turn it off. It's like what I live for and I love, and it's my passion. And so it's both good and bad, right? Because you're right. It can weigh me down some more, but it's also something that I care about more, right? Like they can, and they've already, you know, since I've been working with them for years, I've already like, worked with various different lawyers. They've shifted law firms, right? Like I started working with one guy and he left for another different law firm. I'm like, all right, now you're working with this person. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. Catch up to speed, I guess. Like, welcome to your new job. This is what we've been working on, right? Like, it's just a job for a lot of them, and it's this entity. And so it's that makes them more resilient, but also makes them less passionate about what they're doing. So I suppose I have that working for me. So I just got to pace myself. And look, to be honest with you, I'm focused on all the stuff that I love, which is to continue creating. And I do continue to create. I'm working on all sorts of different projects that I'll be announcing here in the coming months, which all revolve around the same stuff, right? And it's continuing to push the envelope to create fun, accessible, controversial, just accessible ways of bringing together finance and retail in a fun, quasi-educational, productive manner. So it's what I'm actually passionate about, and that's that's been my drive always. So as long as I'm able to get some of that every day in, then I can go on forever.
Okay. Anything you want to mention that you're working on, or no? Yes.
No, I'd like the one that's already. Well, yeah, no, I'm going to save all the ones that are in the bag for the contractual counterparty. But I know that there's stuff like the only one that I could safely mention right now is the I touched on earlier, the New Americans. This is the movie that's premiering in South by Southwest on Monday, March 13th. I don't know when this podcast will be airing, so that'll be exciting. But the other projects will be announced by the counterparty. So I'm working a lot of these projects. I work with big companies to launch them. So most of the time I let them do the launch since they specialize in that, and I will give them.
A lot of times don't even want you to talk about it. Like,
well, I prefer they do it anyways because they'll do a better job than I can.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching the video. Do me a favor, if you liked it or you like my content, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Leave me a comment in the comment section. I respond to, I don't know, at least 50% at this point. Also, I've got plenty of, I've got a bunch of true crime books that I've written. And so check out my true crime books.
Using forgeries and bogus identities, Matthew B. Cox, one of the most ingenious con men in history, built America's biggest banks out of millions. Despite numerous encounters with bank security, state, and federal authorities, Cox narrowly, and quite luckily, avoided capture for years. Eventually, he topped the U.S. Secret Service's most wanted list and led the U.S. Marshals, FBI, and Secret Service on a 3-year chase, while jet-setting around the world with his attractive female accomplices. Cox has been declared one of the most prolific mortgage fraud con artists of all time by CNBC's American Greed. Bloomberg Businessweek called him the mortgage industry's worst nightmare, while Dateline NBC described Cox as a gifted forger and silver-tongued liar. Playboy magazine proclaimed his scam was real estate fraud, and he was the best. Shark in the Housing Pool is Cox's exhilarating first-person account of his stranger-than-fiction story. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
Bent is the story of John J. Boziak's phenomenal life of crime. Inked from head to toe, with an addiction to strippers and fast Cadillacs, Boziak was not your typical computer geek. He was, however, one of the most cunning scammers, counterfeiters, identity thieves, and escape artists alive, and a major thorn in the side of the U.S. Secret Service as they fought a war on cybercrime. With a savant-like ability to circumvent banking security and stay one step ahead of law enforcement, Boziak made millions of dollars in the international cyber underworld, with the help of the Chinese and the Russians. Then, leaving nothing but a John Doe warrant and a cleaned-out bank account in his wake, he vanished. Boziak's stranger-than-fiction tale of ingenious scams and impossible escapes, of brazen run-ins with the law and secret desires to straighten out and settle down, makes his story a true crime con game that will keep you guessing. Bent: How a Homeless Teen Became One of the Cybercrime Industry's Most Prolific Counterfeiters. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
Buried by the U.S. government and ignored by the national media, this is the story they don't want you to know. When Frank Amadeo met with President George W. Bush at the White House to discuss NATO operations in Afghanistan, no one knew that he'd already embezzled nearly $200 million from the federal government, money he intended to use to bankroll his plan to take over the world. From Amadeo's global headquarters in the shadow of Florida's Disney World, with a nearly inexhaustible supply of the Internal Revenue Service's funds, Amadeo acquired multiple businesses, amassing a mega conglomerate. Driven by his delusions of world conquest, he negotiated the purchase of a squadron of American fighter jets and the controlling interest in a former Soviet ICBM factory. He began working to build the largest private militia on the planet, over 1 million Africans strong. Simultaneously, Amadeo hired an international black ops force to orchestrate a coup in the Congo while plotting to take over several small Eastern European countries. The most disturbing part of it all is, had the U.S. government not thwarted his plans, he might have just pulled it off. It's insanity, the bizarre, true story of a bipolar megalomaniac's insane plan for total world domination. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
Pierre Rossini, in the 1990s, was a 20-something-year-old Los Angeles-based drug trafficker of ecstasy and ice. He and his associates drove luxury European supercars, lived in Beverly Hills penthouses, and dated Playboy models while dodging federal indictments. Then, two FBI officers with the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force entered the picture. Dirty agents willing to fix cases and identify informants. Suddenly, two of Rossini's associates, confidential informants working with federal law enforcement, were murdered. Everyone pointed to Rossini. As his co-defendants prepared for trial, U.S. Attorney Robert Mueller sat down to debrief Rossini at Leavenworth Penitentiary, and another story emerged. A tale of FBI corruption and complicity in murder. You see, Pierre Rossini knew something that no one else knew. The truth. And Robert Mueller and the federal government have been covering it up to this very day. Devil Exposed. A twisted tale of drug trafficking, corruption, and murder in the City of Angels. Available on Amazon and Audible.
Bailout is a psychological true crime thriller that pits a narcissistic conman against an egotistical, pathological liar. Marcus Schrinker, the money manager who attempted to fake his own death during the 2008 financial crisis, is about to be released from prison, and he's ready to talk. He's ready to tell you the story no one's heard. Schrinker sits down with true crime writer Matthew B. Cox, a fellow inmate serving time for bank fraud. Schrinker lays out the details. The disgruntled clients who persecuted him for unanticipated market losses, the affair that ruined his marriage, and the treachery of his scorned wife, the woman who framed him for securities fraud, leaving him no choice but to make a bogus distress call and plunge from his multi-million-dollar private aircraft in the dead of night. The $11.1 million in life insurance, the missing $1.5 million in gold. The fact is, Schrinker wants you to think he's innocent. The problem is, Cox knows Schrinker's a pathological liar, and his story's a fabrication. As Cox subtly coaxes, cajoles, and yes, cons Schrinker into revealing his deceptions, his stranger-than-fiction life of lies slowly unravels. This is the story Schrinker didn't want you to know. Bailout: The Life and Lies of Marcus Schrinker. Available now on Barnes & Noble, Etsy, and Audible.
Matthew B. Cox is a conman, incarcerated in the Federal Bureau of Prisons for a variety of bank fraud-related scams. Despite not having a drug problem, Cox inexplicably ends up in the prison's residential drug abuse program, known as RDAP. A drug program in name only. RDAP is an invasive behavior modification therapy, specifically designed to correct the cognitive thinking errors associated with criminal behavior. The program is a non-fiction dark comedy which chronicles Cox's side-splitting journey. This first-person account is a fascinating glimpse at the survivor-like atmosphere inside of the government-sponsored rehabilitation unit. While navigating the treachery of his backstabbing peers, Cox simultaneously manipulates prison policies and the bumbling staff every step of the way. The program: How a Conman Survived the Federal Bureau of Prisons' Cult of RDAP. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
If you saw anything you like, links to all the books are in the description box.